What's interesting is when you look at the net zero pathways that we are confronted with on a daily basis worldwide, and one famous one is the IEA net zero pathway from 2021, you can start to see a picture like this where the IEA projects in order to reach net zero, we need to reduce our primary energy by 10% in the next 7 years. And that will then remain the same. I do not know how they come to this conclusion, but I think anyone thinking straight about energy demand will tell you that is not realistic in any way. It's not plausible, it's not realistic. On top of that, they have an assumption that by 2050, wind and solar will make a 40% share in primary energy worldwide on average. Just to give you a perspective, Germany reached 5% of wind and solar share in primary energy after 20 years of working on the Energiewende, and spending about 1 trillion in Germany. So again, it gives you a sense about how unrealistic some of these projections are when people talk about net zero, because the IEA basically said, this is what would have to happen to reach what we call net zero. So this is what they project. Look, this is what we have to do. And then they try to tweak it. Okay, this is how we're going to do it. But is it plausible? Okay, I'll leave it up to you to judge. What's interesting as well is that the world of energy and raw materials is a bit bigger than we think. And actually, we're now, this is until 2017, we're now almost at 100 billion tons of raw materials, minerals that we extract every year from our world. 100 billion tons every single year. And that's up from 30 billion tons 50 years ago. Now, population increases this time. At the same time as the energy per capita increase, also the raw material use in tons per capita increase. So not only are we increasing our energy demand, we're also increasing our raw materials we require per capita from the world. And of course, has to be our goal to reduce it as much as possible, or to limit that growth as much as possible, because that is also environmental protection. It's not only, CO2 emissions, there's also a few other things we have to consider about environmental protection. And so what's interesting is that, you have oil, coal, and gas make about 15 billion tons. It includes 8 billion tons of coal. So these 15 billion tons of energy raw materials, which provide us with 80% of our energy, those are required to extract and process all the other 85 billion tons, right? So of these 100 billion tons, you take 15 billion tons just extracting energy raw materials. You make them somehow into usable energy, forms of energy, and that energy is used to extract that other 85 billion tons, which includes the food, the biomass, right? All those things, the non-metallic minerals, the limestone for cement, metallic minerals, the lithium and all those things, the steel and all those things. So it's just to put things into perspective, large scale, what we're doing every day, okay? And how important that energy is, and how small relatively that energy is compared to everything else we're doing, in terms of the raw material. So now look at the investments. This is now the global electricity. And this is, again, remember, 36 plus 23 is roughly 60% of electricity comes from coal and gas. This is the 8%. This is 2019. Now it's actually 10% already. It grew. It's coming from wind and solar. There's some nuclear, 10%. Then there's hydro, biomass, all those things. When you now put next to it the global investment in power generation, you see that actually wind and solar gets 45% of the investment, but contributes only about 10% of our electricity. Coal and gas receive about a little bit half than the investment, contributes about 6% of our electricity. And coal alone, providing almost 40% of electricity, gets only 20% of the investment. But the investment is not matching our current energy supply. Of course, the argument is we'll invest into the future, whatever is clean, so we put more money in there and less money into what's not clean. But when you start to not invest enough in your reliable energy supply, you start to have problems, which you started seeing in the past 2 years. And maybe, Tom, we can talk about this later as well.